Hello, good music lovers, and welcome back into Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
And today we continue our exploration of the musical year 1979. This is our second installment for that year. If you've been following us up to this point, you know that we are two obsessive music lovers from the generation called X. We're building a playlist that folks can use for gatherings and parties, songs sure to get heads nodding, booty shaking, and my favorite, breakouts of drunken sing-alongs. Those are the best songs that get everybody to sing along to. I know we got at least one this week, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It qualifies for that. We've got a late disco classic that it's a name people won't really be familiar with. He's probably best known for a dancer on his U.S. tour. And then a song that kind of signposted the 80s and proved to be very prophetic in its title. Well, first of all, I've been geeking out about 79, looking forward to getting here since we began this podcast. And it's not just 1979. It's this era that we're in now in popular music in America, 1979 to 1981, where you're at the tail end of the disco era, kind of the tail end of the singer-songwriter era, and MTV is just around the corner. So it's those years leading up to MTV and what MTV represented. And what MTV represented is really, I think, signposted in the title of the first song I want to talk about today. And that's by a duo called the Buggles. The song came out in 1979. When they recorded it, they didn't have an album yet. And it was a huge hit number one in the UK, charted here in America, got a lot of radio airplay, and became the first video ever aired on MTV in August of 1981 when music television went on the air on cable here in the United States. And that song is Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Even though this song actually did come out in 79, it's really known as an 80s song. I mean, It's almost the 80s, but it is maybe my most favorite song from the 80s. And it is pretty much considered a one-hit wonder, but because a lot of people have no clue who the Buggles are. And really, they're basically a studio creation.
They're not the Bugaloos. They're not the Bugaloos. That was something completely different. I'm sure. Do you think they even, when they came up with that name, do you think they were even aware that that was a thing? I know there had to have been a lot of confusion when they came out in America.
I don't know. I completely forgot about the Bugaloos. I love the Bugaloos, and I wasn't even making that connection. So if I wasn't making the connection, I doubt a lot of people were.
All right, maybe it was just
because I actually liked them and watched the Bugaloos. No, the Buggles are actually Trevor Horn, Jeff Downs, and when they first formed, a guy named Bruce Woolley. They came up with the name because they were calling themselves like bugs in the studio, like that creep in the night and do, things in the studio that nobody knows who they are. But then they also were riffing off the Beatles too.
Yeah.
Although Trevor Horn does admit it's a pretty stupid name.
It is.
It is. But that's okay, because I really doubt that at the time that they thought they were going to be what they became or how big they became because of this song.
But you know what? You know what else is a stupid name?
What?
The Beatles. when you get down, I mean, honestly, if you just clear your mind of everything, just think of the name. It's dumb.
Yeah, it is pretty silly. At least the Crickets are actually a thing. Beatles, spelt the way they spelled it, isn't even a thing. Neither are Buggles. But I understand where they were coming from with the name. So the story basically starts with these three guys. Now, of the three, Trevor Horn is the one that if anybody knows any of their names would know his name. And that was mainly really because of what he became later, which was a producer who pretty much people say made the sounds of the 80s. So Trevor Horn, actually, he started out as a session guy. He's a bass player. There's a tie here to disco too, because he was dating Tina Charles, who had a hit kind of like mid 70s with I Love to Love, but My Baby Loves to Dance. And she was working under a producer, an Indian-British producer named Badu. So
how do you spell that?
Biddu. If you listen to the Badu orchestra, it's like every background song from The Love Boat. It just sounds like the most total generic disco. Like when you think of disco, this is what you think of. Badu's first hit was Kung Fu Fighting. He produced Kung Fu Fighting.
Great song.
So anyway, Trevor Horn had this connection with Tina Charles, and he kind of got into producing through Badu. Learned a lot from him and sort of took, some of the cues from disco. So he kind of started writing his own songs and got together with Jeff Downs and Bruce Woolley. And they had the first line to the song, "I heard you on my wireless back in 52." And he was kind of just kicking around this line. And then finally, months later, he came up with "Lying Awake, Intent on Tuning In on You," which was actually a reference to the pirate radio stations in Radio Luxembourg when he was a kid, tuning in at night, getting these distant radio stations at night.
And all of those youngsters inspired to become rock and roll musicians who hid under the covers with the transistor radio, real quiet so the parents couldn't. How many millions of times have you heard that story?
Yeah, exactly. And, the pirate radio stations, the Who sellout, that's where those little jingles come from. Radio London. So he actually co-wrote this song with Bruce Woolley. They were shopping it around. Nobody was interested. Nobody was biting on the demo. But Jeff Downs' girlfriend worked at Island Records. So she got the tape to Chris Blackwell. He had already turned them down once. Listened to it again. He thought, okay, actually, maybe this could be something. So they signed them to Island Records. Pretty much right when they started recording the album, Bruce Woolley left and started his own band called Camera Club and recorded an album called English Garden. Thomas Dolby was his keyboard player. Also recorded Video Killed the Radio Star. So now we have Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs in the studio. They actually end up changing the song quite a bit. You can go on to YouTube and listen to Bruce Woolley's version. It's much more straight ahead, new wave. A couple things that I find interesting about the song. First of all, this is 1979. There's no MTV.
Nope.
Videos are being made. In fact, there's like a lot of videos that were made pre-MTV. And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, what are they doing with these videos? Like, where are they being played and what? And there are a few shows here and there that are playing videos, but for the amount of videos that there isn't anything like a concentrated place where they're shown. So this song definitely took on a life after being played on MTV, and it comes across as the age where the radio star is being taken over by video and, like the new futuristic world. But really, it's written from the perspective in the 50s, radio stars taken over by television and movies, and that transition from the dramatic radio shows. And I think it's interesting too, because it has that weird combination of sounding like it's a really old recording.
Right. It's the effect on the vocals.
Yes.
It's one of the key aspects of this song is the vocal effect that makes it sound like a 1920s recording.
Yeah, like it's being played over an old Victrola or something.
And I'll be honest with you, I never made that connection, but it's pretty brilliant because I think when most people think of this song and think of the theme, they think of MTV coming in and changing the game. But that's not what they were thinking about. They were what you said. They were thinking about a past era, kind of like Singing in the Rain, the movie, where talking pictures come in and wipe out a bunch of silent film stars because they can't make that transition. But the fact that he says, "I heard you on the wireless," that should clue you in that it's a nostalgic song.
Right. But it has a futuristic bent to it, too.
Right.
So it's just this interesting combination of nostalgia and futurism. They were really into science fiction. And because they had the interest in production and in the studio, they didn't have the money to be buying sequencers and like all these things that were very expensive at that time. They were there, they were around, but they were super expensive. Right. So they were basically creating what sequencers were doing. They had a live drummer. When they went into the studio,
in the studio, they played it live.
In the studio, yeah. I mean, they are pretty much just a studio creation.
Yeah.
They're Buggles in the studio. They're not playing live. They're not touring. Like you thought Steely Dan was a strictly studio creation. They're even beyond that. So they actually had him play the backing track for 12 hours recording that song because they were trying to get everything lined up just right, just perfectly. And that's how long it took them to get it. It's also one of those songs, too, that you feel like if they would have recorded that song 20 years later, it would have taken them probably like a couple hours. But it took them weeks because they were basically creating what Pro Tools and everything can do now in a flash, but they were having to all do it manually.
Well, let's go back about 8 years, you're a huge Who fan. So Pete Townsend, when he started messing around with synthesizers, they were recording things that sounded like sequenced parts
Hmm.
for Who's Next, Bob O'Reilly. What
But
was the
he's actually
process?
playing those notes. He's actually playing those parts
Yeah.
on a synthesizer. Yeah.
Not a sequencer, not a tape loop,
Not a
just him playing the
sequencer.
same over and over and over again.
Yep. And that's what they were doing too. Synthesized music, people think of as being robotic and not connected to humans.
It became that, but it wasn't always that way. Yeah.
No, because humans had to figure out how to work these things.
Plus the fact you've got a live drummer on it. And it's the best electronic music for me came out during this end of the 70s, early 80s, where a lot of it had live drums. So you still had that human pulse, that soul in the rhythm section. But you had these interesting new sounds created by these machines.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference. And it is noticeable. That vocal sound he actually created by miking through a guitar amp. So it has that sound like, it's being transmitted from a faraway radio signal, which was really clever. Then you also have the female backup singers, and those touches were not in Bruce Woolley's version. So the way that the Buggles recorded it, the different studio techniques they use, it kind of gives it a little bit more of like a novelty feel, which I think makes it more endearing.
Lots of hooks, too.
Yeah, just like you said at the beginning, a lot of these songs are sing-along songs. And I know you weren't necessarily talking about this one, but this definitely fits that mold that a lot of the songs on our playlist where the chorus is totally singable. Everybody, anyone who was alive in the 80s knows that chorus.
In my mind and in my car.
In my car.
We can't rewind. We're very British. We can't rewind. We've gone too far.
Now he's talking about rewinding, and he also mentions VCR.
Yes.
So he's bringing us now into the present day, which
the video age,
is 1979. Like VCRs, those are pretty new at that time, and those are
we didn't have one of those
cutting edge technology.
When did you first get your VCR in your family?
I don't know. I feel like it was in the 80s. It wasn't 79. It wasn't that early.
Not even close.
So VCR was cutting edge technology. And then also the actual video. They do look like they were just plopped on Earth from the future somewhere.
It's a really cool video.
And actually, the video was directed by Russell Mulcahy. He was the one that did all the Duran Duran videos.
Yes. Yep.
And so, I mean, he's like one of the biggest video directors of the 80s, of the iconic directors.
He was really the first guy who became famous as a video director.
Yeah.
Deservedly so. I mean, those early videos made Duran Duran. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't going to be popular otherwise. I mean, there was some, legitimately
but
great.
They boosted their popularity so high. Yeah.
Those were so well made.
This video, they made this video before there was really any reason to have a video. There was no MTV. It was very prophetic in that sense that video did end up killing the radio star by the time the mid 80s rolled around, at least.
Well, and weren't the Beatles the first to really start
Beatles were making promotional videos to play on the Ed Sullivan Show when they stopped touring and they were no longer, like in the public eye. So yeah, they were making videos for that reason. And there were a lot of TV shows that were playing videos. There's lots of videos that were made in the 60s and 70s. But they were more either like a live performance or they weren't put together to be an artistic statement like Video Killed the Radio Star was. I mean, it's primitive in the world of videos.
Very stylish, though.
Yes. And it had an impact. Trevor Horn actually worked in a rubber factory, which I found kind of funny because there's other videos too from this album where they're wearing like rubber gloves, like the ones that you use to wash dishes. The Plastic Age is the name of the album. They're wearing plastic suits.
The Age of Plastic?
Or The Age of Plastic, but there's a song
he had an iconic look, too, with the horn-rimmed glasses and the short hair.
Big bug-eye looking glasses. Yeah, they had a look to them.
I want to jump on the lyrics. The key verse here is the second one for me. They took the credit for your second symphony. I love the way he sings that. Symphony. Rewritten by machine on new technology. And now I understand the problems you could see. That's the prophetic verse there about technology coming in and really taking over popular music.
And what did you tell your children?
What did you tell them?
I don't think they necessarily knew what was going to happen as far as the future went, with videos, but we'd already seen it happen with radio turning to TV and movies. So it isn't far-fetched that it would go that direction.
I also get a kick out of when you watch the video or see their promo appearances on television. So they, when they were promoting the single, this was never a touring band. They never had a band. It was a studio thing. And so they never performed live on any of these shows. They just came on and synced. But Jeff Downs always looks like, oh, dear God, I went to music school and I'm fawning around in this silly pop band. He just has that look about him like he's above it all.
Well, not more than like 6 months after this, they actually joined Yes.
That's right.
And
yes.
I'm sure that Jeff was pleased to be involved in that band. They were going to produce their next album. And at that point, Yes was splintering. John Anderson had left. They had just put out their worst album, Tormato, or Tornado, if you're American, right?
we joked about that. I've never heard anybody pronounce it Tornado.
I say Tornado, you say Tormato.
Even the Americans generally say Tormato, I think.
Yeah. John Anderson had left the band, so they were without a lead singer. Rick Wakeman also jumped ship. Trevor and Jeff came in as producers initially, and then Trevor ended up becoming the lead singer of the band, and Jeff the keyboardist, and they recorded one album with Yes, Drama, which we will definitely be talking about in 1980 because it is one of my favorite albums of all time.
A controversial era for the band, but one that we both really hold dear.
Yeah. But suddenly they're in this band that was one of the biggest bands of the 70s, and at the time had like a world tour booked. So they recorded the album, went out on tour. Trevor Horn now all of a sudden is having to sing all the Yes songs, be the lead front man of Yes. And he was perfectly happy in the studio, just tinkering away with the Buggles in a band that they were completely a studio band. And now he's basically doing the polar opposite of that, fronting a band that legendary.
I think they pulled off a great record. I think the tour was probably a big challenge, but when you say that he had to fill John Anderson's shoes, I think you could say that kind of literally. He could probably fit into his clothes too.
Yeah, they're both
little guys.
Smaller guys. Yep. Mm-hmm.
John Anderson's this little elfin figure, and Trevor Horn's a tiny little guy too.
Yeah. And Trevor, his vocal range is kind of high, but nothing like John Anderson's.
No.
I mean, John Anderson has one of the highest ranges of any singer. I'm certain that was the worst point in Trevor Horn's life because his confidence was not at the level it would need to be to pull that off. And they were just kind of thrust into this position. So that only lasted one album. But then after that, Trevor Horn did produce 90125, and one of the most iconic songs of the 80s too.
But before that,
The Lonely Heart.
Before that, Jeff Downs had a big impact on the charts with another member of Yes.
He did. Jeff Downs pretty much immediately after leaving Yes went off with Steve Howe and started Asia.
Steve Howe, the guitarist from Yes. John Wetton, bass player who played with King Crimson, Roxy Music and others, UK. And then Carl Palmer on the drums.
Carl Palmer.
ELP. Yeah.
Yeah, which is basically a supergroup. That's Jeff Downs' claim to fame.
He's been on every Asia album. He's the only guy I think who's been on every album they've released.
And he actually rejoined Yes, too. He's now in Yes and has been for several years, and he's in their touring band and on their latest albums.
Isn't there a new Yes album imminent?
Yeah, there is. There was one that came out a couple years ago, and there's another one that's on the horizon. They haven't stopped. And Trevor Horn is still producing, and he's produced Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, which of course was huge.
Yes, and I just popped this on the other night. We'll definitely be talking about this later on, 84, when that album came out. Really cool record. Really cool record.
It is. I really had never listened to that album, and it's really good.
Yes.
Surprisingly, there's a really great rendition of Born to Run.
Yes, excellent. You nailed it. I love it. I love that version of Born to Run. And I also heard, we're talking too much about this now. We'll have to talk more in 84, but I heard a very distinct Pink Floyd influence on that record too. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah, there is. Trevor Horn produced Malcolm McLaurin's Duck Rock. We'll talk about that in 82 when we start talking about hip hop. ABC Lexicon of Love, huge album, Poison Arrow. The Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm. And Propaganda.
Yes. Very cool record. Propaganda,
A Secret Wish. Those are just
Seal,
his 80s.
even into the 90s, the first Seal album, massive,
Yeah.
massive album, great sounding
Yep.
record.
He's probably just as known as a producer as he is for Video Killed the Radio Star. I mean, the Buggles actually had 2 albums. The second album's called Adventures in Modern Recording, came out in 82. He's a really interesting guy. Lots of really cool interviews on YouTube, current interviews with him, because he's re-recording like songs from the 80s and stuff like that right now. So even though we're in 1979, I still say one of my favorite songs of the 80s, because I think everybody thinks of it as an 80s song.
I think that's apropos. And then I think it's also appropriate that, so they hit big with the single. They rushed to get an album together, and the album came out basically right at the new year. I think first week or second week of 1980.
And it's a great way to usher in the 80s, I think.
Yes, definitely an 80s signpost. You know, when we get into the 80s, we're going to get more into the sweet spot of our peers, I think, our generation. I think you and I agree that we're probably have more of an affinity with 60s and 70s music than 80s music. Maybe you more 80s than me.
I keep confusing myself because I think my favorite era is like from 78 to 82. But then I think about, oh, wait, what about the 60s?
Yeah.
Like pretty much most of my favorite bands are from the 60s.
I just like,
so it is confusing.
Yeah. It's just the 80s production techniques. A lot of those, for me, have not aged well. But Trevor Horn, I think his productions have aged better than most, because I think they're just immaculate recordings.
And he doesn't use that gated snare sound with everything. And the techniques he uses don't pigeonhole his music. That's kind of a tough thing to do in the 80s, because I think it is one of the eras that is so easily identifiable, and usually kind of in a negative sense.
Right. Mainly for the drums. Horrible drum sound.
Right.
Well, as we continue our journey through 1979, it's only appropriate that we now talk about Journey. The Journey story is really a story of, it's almost 2 separate bands. So Journey originally formed in 1973, kind of as a spin-off from Santana. The original Santana band recorded 4 albums, the self-titled album, Abraxas, Santana 3, and then Caravanserai, and then kind of imploded around 73. Neil Schon had joined the group for that 3rd album, and
he was only 17.
He was 15, Sheryl.
When he started 17.
When he started playing with Santana, he was 15 years old. Incredible.
Really?
Incredible. Now, I know most of you have heard Santana. If you've never listened to that 3rd album,
that's my favorite Santana album by far.
It is maybe my favorite too, either that or Abraxas. It's got to be in the top 10 rock guitar album.
It is so good.
And Sean plays the lights out on that thing. So Santana kind of fizzles out in 73. Neil Schon, along with the keyboardist and vocalist Greg Raleigh, they join up with a couple other Bay Area musicians, Ross Valerie and George Tickner, who had a band called Frumious Bandersnatch. Talk about great band names. And then the original, now I did not know this until I started researching this episode. Sheryl, did you know who the original the first drummer for Journey was?
Prairie Prince.
Prairie Prince, not a Bay Area guy for the Tubes.
That surprised me too.
Yeah. So he didn't last too long.
Then he went back to the Tubes. He's the Tubes drummer.
And then they brought in Ainsley Dunbar, who was a legendary drummer, who drummed with Zappa, who drummed with Jefferson Airplane. Eventually, Steve Smith would be the drummer, both of them with some jazz chops. So Journey originally, more in the Santana vein, kind of a jam band, exploratory, more instrumental-based music. Greg Raleigh, really key part of that Santana sound with his organ and his vocals.
And his vocals. Yeah.
So I'll be straight with you. I've never explored those first 3 Journey albums. I've always thought of Journey as, we've talked about a greatest hits band. Journey really fits that bill for me. But I've got the 2-disc Essential Journey greatest hits. Not one track on that from the first 3 records. They had no hits. They got FM radio play, but not like drive time FM play, maybe late at night on, more exploratory kind of freeform shows, but they weren't really getting anywhere commercially.
Nothing stands out as a single on any of those albums.
No. So changes start to take place, and the key change would be at the vocal position when, for their 4th album, Infinity, they bring in a guy named Steve Perry, who had been kicking around in He's a Californian. He'd been in a couple other groups that hadn't really had any success. Another interesting thing, he was actually in a group with Tim Bogert, bassist and vocalist for Vanilla Fudge, for a while. They couldn't get a record deal. So Steve Perry comes in, just incredible, soulful vocalist, but he's got a pop sensibility too that the band lacked before that. So they go for a while with two vocalists, with Steve Perry, who's just a vocalist, doesn't play an instrument, and then Raleigh, piano, organ, and vocals. If you're looking for a good example, the two-vocal Journey, just the same way. They share vocals on that, with Raleigh singing the verses and Steve Perry the choruses. Raleigh would eventually depart the band amicably. I don't know if you'd say amicably he left Santana, but just as they were about to hit it big, he stepped away. But he's still in the group at this point in 1979 for the Evolution album when they record the song that I'm putting on the playlist. Now, when this song came out in, I believe, February or March of that year, maybe April, early in 79, I wasn't clued into it at that point. The first Journey song I ever heard on the radio was later in the year off the Departure album called Any Way You Want It. That was my first experience with Journey, and it was all right. I didn't love it. It's not one of my favorite Journey songs.
I like that song.
Yeah, it's okay. But Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin was their first top 40 appearance. Now, they had a hit record with Infinity, but they didn't have any hit singles off that album. Although songs that you look back and you're kind of like, really? Those weren't hits? Lights?
Yeah, I know, because they definitely became radio songs.
Lights wasn't a hit?
Yeah.
Wheel in the Sky wasn't a top 40 hit? No, neither of them were.
Well, and Feeling That Way and Anytime.
Feeling That Way. So they're gaining steam. Steve Perry kind of takes them up a level. Now they've got a hit album on their hands, although still haven't had a hit single. But they're moving in that direction because their sound is becoming more commercial. That's really more the area that Steve Perry fits in. Whereas the previous group was based on an earlier era of album rock bands and FM. So they're gaining steam. And now Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin comes out in 79. And it's just a vocal tour de force. I watched a great documentary about Journey on YouTube last night. And one of the things I loved about it is the documentary really focuses on the guys behind the scenes, the road crew, the guys who set up the stage and take care of their instruments and get things transported from venue to venue. Talks about their manager, Herbie Herbert, and what a key figure he was. Herbie Herbert was a protege of Bill Graham, who was considered maybe the greatest rock and roll promoters, managers. Died tragically in a helicopter accident. But he learned at the feet of Bill Graham. He was a roadie before he was a manager. Real savvy guy, and took Journey into the stratosphere. They were playing stadiums by the early 80s. And of course, the Escape album comes out in 81, and they were massive.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly enough, would you believe Journey has never had a number one hit? Don't Stop Believin' was never a number one
Don't
song.
Stop Believing's the only one that I would think would have been. That is kind of surprising, though, because Escape was huge.
Right. Three bands.
Massively huge.
Three bands to me stand out where you're just shocked that they never hit number one. Journey, Electric Light Orchestra never had a number one hit. And then the one that just is amazing to me is Creedence Clearwater Revival. They had like 5 or 6 songs that hit number 2, but just couldn't
crack number one.
Could not get into that top spot. Well, Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin was their first foray into the charts. And this really it's just a tour de force vocal performance. And honestly, whenever Steve Perry opens his mouth, it's a tour de force.
Yeah.
So the documentary just illustrates what a natural talent he was. Just effortless, perfect, soulful voice. And this really dynamic stage presence, always smiling on the stage. Seems like always having a good time. And he hits every note live. They had a whole string of performances on Midnight Special in the 70s as they were building up to their breakthrough at the end of the decade. And then you get to see a lot of them in live performance in this documentary, which came out around the Frontiers tour. And actually, the start of that tour was at the Kingdom, as a matter of fact. So it was like their first.
I saw that tour.
Did you? So you were at that show?
That was my first concert.
No kidding. What do you remember about it?
What I remember about it was getting sick to my stomach from all the pot around me.
Did you know what that smell was at that point in time?
Yeah. No, I went with my friend and her dad, and we both just felt nauseous. And we actually were just like, I don't even think we stayed for the whole show. But I guess Bryan Adams opened up for him.
No, wow, okay, yeah.
I don't remember that at all. But I was really into Journey at the time.
Oh yeah, well I loved the hits in the 80s for sure. Never had any of their albums, but loved the singles.
Escape was a big album for me.
Right.
Like that was one of my first albums that I owned.
But Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin is the song I was referring to in the intro, where if that comes on the radio, time just stops for me. clear the room. Rickard's going to start.
Clear the roller rink,
Clear
because
the
that's a total skating song for me too.
But it shows you the roots of his vocal style really go back to the soul crooners of the 60s. The fit Sam Cooke, probably the biggest in. Sam Cooke had such an influence on so many singers. I think Rod Stewart will be the first one to tell you that he's number one on the list of influences. But you listen to Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin, you could easily hear that in a orchestrated Sam Cooke record from the late 50s, early 60s. It would be right up his alley.
You send me. Right.
Yep,
That's
yep. But it's not a song for the karaoke novice. Let's just put it that way. If you're going to tackle that song in karaoke,
song is.
You better prep your voice and make sure you can hit those notes, because Steve Perry makes it look easy, but he's hitting some really tough notes getting up there.
In the stratosphere. Yeah. And he is probably one of the best. I mean, he's probably one of the best vocalists of the 70s, but he is probably one of the best live vocalists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Of that era, too.
Absolutely.
Just flawless.
Well, and you got the sense watching that video, too, that it was really great chemistry in the group at that time. Perry, Neil Schon on guitar, still a young man. It's funny, too. I draw parallels between Neil Schon and Randy California, a hero of mine. I've been obsessing about Spirit for years now. Randy California was about the same age as Neil Schon when that first Spirit album came out. He was 16 years old. So you're down the road from that, and you think this guy's been through the ringer, the 4 Spirit albums. He kind of had a mental breakdown and was living on the beach in Hawaii, got horribly addicted to cocaine, kind of made his big comeback with that Spirit of 76 album that I've been playing to death lately. He's still, in 1975, he's like 24 years old, and he's like this has-been. Who's got this long history. Well, Neil Schon, by the time Journey is hitting their commercial peak there in the early 80s, he's still a very young man. I mean, he was only 15.
Well, and Santana also, Michael Shreve was like 17 or something too.
Super drummer.
The drummer. Yeah.
So you got Schon, who's really more the kind of the classic rock star. Doesn't come off as being the brightest guy in the world. And then Ross Valerie, kind of the clown, and Steve Smith, just the real down-to-earth, sweet, good-natured family man on the drums. And you listen to Journey's drum parts. For the most part, it seems pretty basic, but the guy's got he's went to Berkeley Music School. He's got jazz chops. So he gets
he does a lot of instructional videos, and he was the session guy too. But I tell you, like, Don't Stop Believin', if I were actually going to play the drums on that like they are on the album, it is so hard. And forget it trying to sing that song, but trying to play the drums properly on that song is really difficult.
Well, it's the mark of a great drummer to play a complicated part and make it seem simple, because that's kind of what got Ainsley Dunbar kicked out of the band. Is when Steve Perry joins, they're simplifying their sound. They're trying to make it more commercial. They're trying to get radio airplay. They're trying to have hits. They're trying to break into AM radio. And Ainsley Dunbar, okay, he can get his parts done in the studio, but when they get into the live setting, he can't help himself. I mean,
it's a free form, free jazz.
They're trying to get him to rein it in, and it's just not. And the music really wasn't what he wanted to be playing. So he left the group, and then Steve Smith came in. And that's your classic Journey lineup with the Valerie Smith rhythm section, Neil Schon, George Tickner, the rhythm guitarist, he'd left quite a while before. And then Jonathan Cain had joined the group at this point, but he was the last piece. He brought in that lyrical sensitivity, the beautiful ballads.
The power ballads.
So he'd already had some success with the Babies. And so he comes in for the Escape album, and that took him to the top level. At this point, it's still Greg Raleigh on the keys. And actually, they went through a little transition period where Raleigh had departed, and they brought in a guy named George Fleischman. It didn't last very long. I think he partly composed one track for Escape, and then they brought in Jonathan Cain to finish the record. But Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin' was just that next step. You had the early group. It's almost like a different group, the first 3 records. Steve Perry joins. That's Journey Mark II. And then the next step is breaking into the top 40 in the American charts with Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin'. And it's a simple song. It's just a showcase.
It's just like a blues.
It's a showcase. It's a simple theme about your baby's out, loving, touching, squeezing someone else. You stepped out on me. Pretty soon, your man's going to step out on you, and you're going to see how it feels. It's a basic blues trope in the
Yeah.
lyrics. I think the classic example further on up the road, Bobby Blue Plant, you're going to get yours. Basically, the last line of that song is the theme. But the song is essentially 2 minutes long, and then you got the coda with the na, 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 na.
Yes.
Na,
Kind of
na,
like
na,
a
na.
la Hey Jude. It's got the, which you could just sing along forever.
So Journey's cool because they're part of that AOR that's just got savaged by critics. They get lumped in with all the other groups, but they had a lot of things that kind of set them apart and put them at a higher level. Certainly Steve Perry's vocals.
Yeah.
And the lyrics, particularly when Jonathan Cain comes on board, they had a real sensitivity to them. You don't get a lot of the typical misogynistic cliches in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Foreigner, I'm looking at you.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. God, compare the lyrics to something like Faithfully, which is a beautiful, beautiful song and a beautiful lyric.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk
or
too
Open
much.
Arms.
Open Arms.
Come to you with open arms.
Very romantic, very romantic. To something like Hot Blooded,
It's urgent.
or head games or Dirty White Boy or one of those things.
Oh my God, yeah.
So yeah, Journey's a level of
age well.
Yeah. And then if you really pay attention, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the musical arrangements too, and the harmonies. The harmonies always so critical in the music that I like. Those guys can really sing, and you get a good look at that if you jump on YouTube. Check out the documentary I'm talking about, where they're doing their sound check and they're testing the mics. They're doing a cappella harmonies. It's really, really tight. And then when they're on Midnight Special, they do a cute little thing where they do a cappella version of the song, the Leadbelly song, Midnight Special. Those guys could really sing, not just Steve Perry, but the backing voices as well. They could all, it all fit into the picture. And of course, production. Roy Thomas Baker is their producer at this point. Most famous for Queen and the Cars. So you got a big name producer taking care of things in the studio, and then Herbie Herbert running the show. They did a lot of things to help this band be successful. And they were kind of the vanguard of the big arena shows in terms of use of lighting and video. They really were setting some trends there. In fact, they were so good at it that Herbert started a whole company around that aspect of their concert production. They farmed it out to other artists. So he really did very well for himself as a manager, not just with Journey's record sales and tour revenue, but all these other avenues that he went down. He deserves a lot of the credit. And he was their manager from the very beginning all the way through to about 1996. I don't want to get into the whole soap opera around Journey now because it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad to me to think that the longest serving vocalist in Journey is now Arnel Pineda. Basically, they found fronting a Journey cover band. But that gets to the heart of what I defined as an AOR band. It's a band where the individuals aren't big stars. I think Steve Perry is more recognizable than a lot of other guys for these because he had some solo hits with some success and videos on MTV.
And his voice is pretty distinct.
Yes. But a lot of these bands, they have just continuous life. They could bring in new members all the time and keep touring because it's the name of the band. It's the logo that sells. It's not the individuals.
It's a brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if Led Zeppelin started touring without Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, who would go to that concert? Who would go to a Who concert without Roger Daltrey or Peter Townsend? Nobody. But Journey could still tour and pack huge arenas with some Filipino guy off a cover band.
But it's the songs too, because those songs defined our youth.
Yeah.
Right. They had such an impact. I mean, for me, I really think of those songs as being kind of the cornerstone of junior high dances, like Open Arms and Faithfully. And then later they become the songs, like you said, with karaoke. There's always someone that sings Don't Stop Believin' in karaoke, and everybody sings it. So I feel like that music just kind of brings people together in a nostalgic way.
Two interesting things of note on that Essential Journey Greatest Hits, the 2-disc Greatest Hits collection. Well, A, they don't recognize those first 3 records. So basically the band didn't exist before Steve Perry joined. Every song on there is from a Steve Perry fronted version of Journey. And the first track on the album took me by surprise. It wasn't Don't Stop Believin'. It was Only the Young. It's like, well, that's a bold move. Honestly, before I popped it on the player, I didn't even really remember how that song went. I think it was on a movie soundtrack. I don't think it was even on any of
I
the
don't remember
albums.
that song.
It's a really good song. It's a really good song. In fact, I'm listening to that and I'm like, God, I hear kind of an REM feel on this song. I could hear REM doing this with the guitar arpeggios. So I thought that was cool, but they've got so many great songs that it's almost like they're showing off by not leading with most iconic one because they've got a whole bushel full.
Because they have so many, they could have a 2-disc collection.
Yeah.
And
so Don't Stop Believin', of course, is the song that has transcended generations, and we'll get there. We'll certainly, if that doesn't make our playlist for 81, I will be surprised because I loved it at the time. I'm sure you did too if you were at a Journey concert in 1983. And those ballads, Faithfully, Open Arms, Who's Crying, those are, I mean, you look up power ballad in the dictionary, and that should be
that's the definition right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I suggested that we do a Mount Rushmore special episode and pick our top 4 power ballads. It would be tough for me to choose.
I think the problem with that, though, is you get into like what really is a power ballad. And I do agree that certainly Open Arms and Faithfully would definitely fit the bill. But it gets a little gray as far as what's considered a power ballad.
Yeah, but I think we can agree that Journey really perfected the art of the power ballad. And Jonathan Cain deserves a lot of the credit, but that's Steve Perry. That's in his wheelhouse too. He was already a really good ballad singer, and he brought his own. Lights was his song. That's a beautiful ballad.
Well, you need the emotional vocals behind it to really lift a power ballad to its true potential. And Steve Perry can do that.
So I have a love-hate relationship with Don't Stop Believin'. Because it was adopted by the Boston Red Sox, and that became a big Fenway Park song, particularly when they broke the curse and won the World Series. And now it's almost like every ballpark, you got to play that song. And this has been
become like YMCA.
So for those, again, if you haven't followed us from start to finish on our journey here, and you don't know our background, Sheryl and her husband, Mike, co-own a chain of record stores up there in the Puget Sound area. I'm a sportscaster. I work for a minor league baseball team down here in suburban Portland. And I love our game day guys. Particularly, we had a guy named Peter Lee. He's not with us anymore. But the first several years of the Hillsboro Hops, he was the one responsible for playing the music at the ballpark. And he's like us. He's a music geek. He's knowledgeable, very knowledgeable about music. And there's a lot of great in-jokes. So he's playing a lot of songs that are puns based on the players' names that are at bat, and a lot of fun choices. But I tell our guys, it's like, okay, we play Sweet Caroline. Again, that's a Red Sox thing. Let's come up with our own theme song to play at a certain time every night. Make it our own, and maybe we'll influence other teams. There's just so many great songs out there. I don't like the idea of copying, what other people are doing. But, again, Journey, that song, I think it's the most streamed song ever on Spotify. Don't Stop Believin'.
Yeah, I think it was. It did hold that record at one point, I think early on in streaming.
So
I believe it because it's so iconic for people our age.
So it took us a while, but we got some honest to goodness AOR on our playlist as Journey makes the list. Our last choice, absolute stone cold late disco era classic, and really one of the last big disco hits. Not a massive hit in the United States, did make the top 40, did get played on hit radio at that time. I loved it at the time. The song is Born to Be Alive, the artist Patrick Hernandez.
I was not familiar with this song at all. Definitely not from the era, and even currently.
Oh, I definitely remember hearing it on KB 101 back in 1979.
I mean, it does have a familiarity to it because it's just so classic disco, but I don't really know if I've ever heard it. Now, I can't get it out of my head. I mean, it's pretty much stuck in there for the rest of time because it's so catchy. So Patrick Hernandez, he's Spanish father, Italian mother, born in France. There's really not a lot about him that I've been able to find. I know he worked with a number of different groups in France. And he actually formed a band called Paris Palace Hotel with his music partner, Hervé Tholance. And they did have a couple of singles that were hits in Europe. One was called Back to Boogie, kind of a glam rock sing-along. They had another song, too, called Ramona. Both of those songs sound like they could be in Sid and Marty Krofft productions.
The Buggles could have done them.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you watch them performing, you're like, okay, yeah, this would fit right in. So he did have a couple hits with Paris Palace Hotel. And he had this song, Born to Be Alive, that was written when he was in that band. He met a Belgian producer and they recorded the song there. Actually, I don't really think that it was a disco song when it was first written. I think it was more like a glam rock song, like what he'd been doing with his past band. But they discoed it up. And now all of a sudden,
they disco-fied it. Use the proper terminology. It was disco-fied.
It was totally disco-fied and became a huge global hit. Like you said, it wasn't as big in America, but it did still sell over 1 million copies in America. Yeah. But it was more regulated to the disco crowd, the actual discos. Anyway, he had this kind of image. I think you said, Matt, that he and Leo Sayer maybe had the same hairdresser because they do have a similar hairstyle. And for some reason, he decided that he wanted to have a prop. So he has this cane that he dances around with, if you can call it dancing, kind of struts around with on stage whenever he's performing. He really doesn't have the dance moves to back up the disco song. So So he just struts around with the cane. And it's kind of funny because there's some live performances of Back to Boogie with him and his other partner. And he's got that cane. And there's a few times where it's almost like he spins around and just about whacks the other guy in the head. This seems like it could be a liability. So, this song is huge. He's on Top of the Pops. He's on all the big shows promoting the song. He's on American Bandstand. The song is being used on Soul Train. So in 79, he embarks on a tour of the U.S. And when he's in New York, he's trying to find backup dancers. And one of the women who auditions and they are really impressed with is one Madonna Louise Ciccone, who we all now know as just Madonna. She was 19 years old. And she actually toured with his band for 3 months as a dancer and backup singer. And he kind of did help jumpstart her career in that sense. So the song itself, it's pretty simple. The verses are nothing that interesting. The lyrics are, it's a positive lyric.
Not far removed from the Village People, and as far as the verses are concerned. Simple nursery rhyme-ish lyric.
But that's also what makes this a good song, just like YMCA's. It's very sing-along. Yeah. So it has that bouncy sing-along feel to it. But then you get to the chorus, born, 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 born to be alive. And then you've got this guy.
Born to be alive.
Yes. In the back.
My voice isn't, I haven't done any games live.
I can't go that low. Fun. It's kind of cool. I like it. And then it has this cool little guitar riff.
That's the key right there.
Which is definitely in a lot of disco songs. It's a very disco guitar riff, but definitely stands out in this song. Everything about it is just so catchy. It really is. Of course, there's versions of it that are like 15 minutes long. And, there's also 3-minute versions that were edited down for radio or Top of the Pops. I think probably about 6 minutes maybe.
Yeah. I think the extended version, the official extended version was about 7. And it's good enough groove that it can maintain to 6-7 minutes. But I saw a 10-minute plus version on YouTube, and it does wear out its welcome eventually.
Yeah, that's a little overkill. So I was thinking about this, like, which one are we going to put on the playlist? I think probably the extended, 7-minute version would be okay.
That's what I'm feeling right now. That's what's going to go on mine, I think. If I can find it. I haven't really been able to track that down on Apple Music.
It is on Spotify, and there's several different versions on Spotify. So I'll have to see if I can find the one that's just right there in the sweet spot at 7 minutes.
Clue me into the album you found it on, and I'll search it out on
It's a single. It's only on there as a single.
Oh, okay.
Because, this is back in the days when 12-inch singles and, that's what the DJs were using. There is a full album called Born to Be Alive. But once again, similar to the Village People, you've got a lot of filler in there and really nothing else that stands out that you'd need to listen to. Like, this is the song. Yeah. And he's milking the song forever until the end of time, too, because you can find a lot of current performances and he still has the cane.
Now he actually needs it, right?
Yeah.
But interesting, though, you mentioned he's still milking the song. So from what I could tell, he didn't really record much. After, I think the next year he put out another single and album, but after that, not much of anything.
He a
And
couple albums, but nothing that had any songs that were remembered.
the song was a big enough hit globally that he could certainly easily live off the proceeds for the rest of his life as the sole songwriter. But I guess there's some question about that.
Well, when we were doing the 78 episode with Sniffin' the Tears,
Driver's seat. Yep.
I found the Sniffin' the Tears website, and on there, Paul Roberts, who's the lead singer, has a whole blog. And so he's talking all about what he was doing before that, because that song was on their first album. And before they recorded Driver's Seat, he was living in France. And apparently he says that he was asked to partner with Paris Palace Hotel because they had this song, Born to Be Alive, that, like I said at the time, really wasn't disco-fied. But English was not their native language. So he was asked to come in and rewrite the lyrics for them in English. So he did that. So he says that he wrote the lyrics, and he's never been credited. I cannot find any record of this anywhere else on the internet.
I'm sure Patrick Hernandez isn't owning up to anything.
He's not owning up to anything. And he's like, no one knows who Paul Roberts is. No one cares about Sniffin' the Tears anymore. You know, I mean, they were barely a blip on the radar in the 70s. And Paul Roberts even says that he's never pursued this or tried to, get anything from it, but he's never been credited as the co-writer. I mean, it's really not much to write home about anyway, because it's not like the lyrics or anything great. But I will say that this song does lead into what a lot of disco morphed into the 80s, and like Bronski beat.
Right. More electronic based. It went from being what I call, I've never heard a reference to it. I think it's apropos. The early disco stuff, it's a big band revival with all the musicians, strings, horn players, multiple guitars, multiple percussionists. Now you're whittling it down to where one machine is providing all the musical back. Now, it's not the case on this song, but it's heading in that direction.
Yeah. And where you just have the same thing repeated over and over again.
Yeah. The human pulse going away.
Yeah.
When disco first emerged, it primarily came out of the gay clubs in a couple of different cities, New York in particular, Miami, and then went mainstream, got massively popular, and now it's just kind of going back to its roots. And once you get into the 80s, the music has changed. It's streamlined. It's more mechanized, and it's going back underground, back into the clubs.
Yeah, and I think this song definitely was more in that vein.
Definitely signposted what disco would morph into. You still had songs that were hits through the 80s that really were pretty disco-y, but people just weren't calling it that anymore.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden the word became a pejorative. Well, not all of a sudden. Steve Dahl, big reason why that happened. The disco
all of a sudden disco sucks. And you don't want to be lumped into that. Now, This song is used a lot in commercials. It's actually in the new Minions movie. The most recent Minions movie, there's a remake of this song. So it still has a life, just like a lot of these disco hits. Nothing like YMCA, but maybe you need to start playing this song, Matt, at sporting events.
No, I was, when I was going through the different versions on YouTube, and by the way, great entertainment. Some of these YouTube, it's soundtracks. This World Disco Dancing
the World Disco Dancing Championship. And they use this song.
Yeah, about a 10-minute video, and it is really entertaining.
It is. They go, each country has about like a maybe 10-second where the person from each country comes out and does their dance and then moves out. Then the next person comes on. It's just a continuous stream for like 10 minutes. And yes, it's very entertaining. And interesting too, because a lot of the dances, you can see traditional European dancing in there. And then you can also see pop and lock and like what would become breakdancing starting to come into play. And it's an interesting watch.
Yeah, there another video I found where it soundtracks one of the Soul Train lines, which are always fun to watch. Like a lot of these great songs we've covered already, takes me back to that era. And
I think you need to bring it back. I think you need to start to bring it to the masses.
Well, yeah. When I was going through the different videos, I was like, man, that groove, you could use that easily as a backing at a sporting event for like doing starting line. It's good pump up hype music.
Yeah, it's really high energy. Everybody could clap to it.
Yep. Actually, there was something I wanted. The Buggles, a little bit of trivia here. Now, we both love Yes and have for a long time when we love the Drama album, which a lot of Yes fans do not. But if somebody were to come up to you, Sheryl, and say, this Yes keyboardist has the Guinness World Record for most different keyboards on stage at a live concert, you'd say, well, that's easy, right? You know the answer to that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's Rick Wakeman.
Oh, absolutely. Rick Wakeman
Yeah.
with the flowing blonde locks and the capes
The
and,
capes,
going
the
all over the
wall, the
place. Yeah.
massively surrounded by massive amounts of synthesizers and keyboards. Yeah, for
But
sure.
no, you would be wrong. It's Jeff Downs on
What?
that one tour. Apparently had 28 different keyboards on stage
Wow.
during his concert. So, according to Guinness Book of World Records, I don't know. It'd be hard to validate that record, I guess.
And really, I would also have to question, is he actually playing all of them?
That's
Because Jeff Downs is a much more simplistic player than Rick Wakeman.
He's no Keith Emerson, no Rick Wakeman.
No. So it might have just been for show. I doubt he was actually playing them all, but I don't know.
Before we close things out, circling back to Video Killed the Radio Star, when I say that song proves prescient, the reason I love this 79 to 81 era, because it's the last gasp of all of these male artists that nobody's going to want on a poster. Nobody's gonna put a pin up of guys like, well, let's go back to songs we've already chosen.
Like Jerry Rafferty,
Billy Swan,
yep.
Tony Orlando, all these kind of.
Well, some of these guys, not Tony Orlando necessarily, but the other two, don't have the charisma to be on camera. Not just the looks, but the charisma.
Yeah.
And there's something there that definitely shifts when all of a sudden we are seeing visuals along with the music.
Yeah.
Duran Duran's a perfect example of go back to the teen idols at that point.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not Billy Swan and Jerry Rafferty.
No. So that's really what Video Killed the Radio Star signifies to me, is the end of the line for all of these men, these often slightly chubby, hairy, not photogenic guys who might have wonderful voices, might be beautiful songwriters, excellent players. Christopher Cross, we'll get to him too. So this is their last hurrah during this 3-year period, 1979 to 1981. We're going to get a lot of them on our playlist, I think, before we're done. But that's going to be a fun part of this.
Before they were phased out.
Our next several episodes. So there you have it. We've got 3 more songs to add to our playlist for 1979. The Buggles with Video Killed the Radio Star. Journey's classic Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin, and the one-hit wonder in the United States for Patrick Hernandez, late disco classic, Born to Be Alive. We got a lot more 1979 music on future episodes. I already know where we're going, at least one song on the next episode, and it is early electronic music classic and the first 45 I ever bought as a kid with my own money. And I just realized it's a 1979 song. I thought it was 1980, but it came out in late 1979. That's Cars.
A lot of these songs that are so connected to the 80s, like Video Killed the Radio Star, you think of as an 80s song.
Right,
and this song, and the song you're talking about as well. So it's kind of in that gray area where 79 is really just, you're not quite the 80s yet, but these songs followed all the way through into the 80s.
So we're going to talk about Cars by Gary Newman in the episode. We're going to talk about some of the 79 albums that we love. Neither of us is, I think Sheryl has pretty much set on hers. I'm pretty much set on mine, but I'm not going to make it official on the next episode. But we'll talk about some of the great albums that came out in 79 as well. That'll be the next time. But until then, I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
And you've been listening to Matt and Sheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.